Good morning. Welcome to the conference. Today we're going to be talking about domestic violence advocates and the protection from abuse database. My name is Deb Pipes. I'm with the Pennsylvania State Police Clean Administrative Section, and Lieutenant Jason Winkowski is joining me as well. What is CLEAN? CLEAN is the Commonwealth Law Enforcement Assistance Network. It's a statewide computerized system. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for criminal justice law enforcement communities. A better understanding of what CLEAN actually is when you are on a traffic stop, an officer, police officer has you on the side of the road. He's running your vehicle registration. He's running your driver's license information through CLEAN, which goes out and hits nationwide databases to tell the officer on the side of the road, is that you driving that car with your PennDOT information? Is that vehicle stolen? Is that person wanted? Are you missing? Whatever the case may be. So that's what CLEAN is all about. In 2018, Governor Wolf signed Act 79, which made changes to the protection from abuse order requirements. This act created new procedures regarding the relinquishment of firearms, ammunition, and other weapons by the defendant named in the PFA order. Prior to Act 79, the defendant could turn his weapons over to a family member or a friend or the county sheriff's office, and they were allowed 30 days to comply with the order. Well, with Act 79, this all changed. Firearms can no longer be given to friends or family for safekeeping. The firearms and ammunition, other weapons have to relinquish to law enforcement agencies, sheriff's office, federal firearms license dealer, licensed commercial armory, and certain third parties. These items have to be now relinquished within 24 hours of the issuance of a final protection order or the service of the temporary protection order, regardless if there could be special circumstances, but we find those very few and far between. The Protection from Abuse Database, PFAD, as you all know, has been updated for different modifications for this act. We now have forms on PFAD law enforcement can complete when the defendant turns in his weapons at their agency. We also send notifications through CLEAN when the defendant's order is issued. If he's not turned in his weapons within 24 hours, the law enforcement agency gets notified of that every morning as well. So, like I said, they get notified, the law enforcement agency, that the defendant has a PFA at that specific police department. When you, the advocate, are completing the petition, the temporary order, the final order, we're going to take a look where you can add different police departments, sheriff's departments, etc. in PFAD so that these notifications are delivered to them when the orders are issued. If the relinquishments haven't been taken care of, the defendant hasn't brought his weapons in. And then finally, when the PFA has expired or it's been dismissed, that law enforcement agency also gets notified that those weapons can be returned to the defendant. Just a couple things that were changed with this act on the petition. One of the questions was, has the defendant ever been determined to be a perpetrator in a child protective services incident? It's very easy, yes or no, if you know if you know he was, or if the protected person knows. And then, of course, what county or court agency is he taken care of. The temporary final order, section 6, this is where the weapons get marked for relinquishment. When you check box 6, and then you go down to where the other circle is there, the defendant is to relinquish his firearms. When they're doing this in the back, you're doing all of this. And then once it's sent over to PSP, we have all of this on a data sheet that is very easy for the PCO, the police communications operator, to look at when reviewing the order for final entry into clean and NCIC. If you check defendant is prohibited from possessing or acquiring any firearms during the duration of this order, this does not trigger a weapons relinquishment. This is more of, hey, he's not allowed to possess or acquiring any for the duration of this order, completely different than the box that is down below where the judge has directed the relinquishment to the sheriff or the appropriate law enforcement agency. These are the clean agreements, or not clean agreements, the clean messages that you'll see when law enforcement will see when they get them via clean. Tells us, hey, this is an expired, dismissed temporary order. This is an expired, dismissed final order. The judges, and we've seen this over the course of this act, where the judge will issue a weapon relinquishment on the temporary order, but then he will go back and remove it on the final order. The law enforcement will get this clean message saying that this person's PFA has expired or been dismissed. It's not really been expired or dismissed. It's just the change in the weapons relinquishment. Another addition to the temporary and final order is box 8, where the Pennsylvania State Police, municipal police, or the sheriff may accompany the plaintiff to his or her residence to retrieve their personal belongings while the petitioner order is served on the defendant. So that's there for them as well. If that's something that your protected person is asking, or the judge is saying, hey, you might want to have this done, this is where you would check box 8. In the temporary order in Relief 9, this is where you would go to select what police department you want these clean notifications to go to. So in this situation, you always want to make sure that you have the plaintiff's police department in there and the defendant's police department. If for some reason the defendant is evicted from his residence and the plaintiff doesn't know where he is at the time when the order is served, or whatever the case may be, it will fall back to the plaintiff's police department to try and locate the defendant so that they can get those weapons relinquished. Your county, you can select any county in there. You can select the ORI box, and it will pop up with a bunch of different agencies in that county. In the example that we're looking at now, this is Cumberland County. As you see, all the police departments listed for Cumberland County will show up in your dropdown. If you're using the County of Dauphin, like the example there, all of the police departments in Dauphin County will show up so that you can click on the add button, and it will add those police departments, the sheriff, PSP, whoever the case may be, so that they're all notified. First, a PFA has been issued. The PFA requires weapons relinquishment. And each day until FAD is updated, those law enforcement agencies will get notified that, hey, the defendant still hasn't turned in his weapons. You can select other police departments. Let's say, we have a County of Dauphin, but there's a new police department out there. You can add it in there manually so that's added to the list. Most times they will not get the clean notifications. This is really big when you're putting out-of-state agencies in there. If the defendant lives in New Jersey, he moved to New Jersey, or he lives in New Jersey, and you put New Jersey Police Department in there, New Jersey does not get clean notifications. Clean is a Pennsylvania state system, so therefore we don't send these types of messages outside of the Commonwealth. So once all of these agencies are entered, like I said, these agencies will get these notifications. Most of the police departments, sheriff's departments in the Commonwealth, their clean access, their clean messages is managed by the 911 center. So 5:30 every morning, 911 gets a clean message saying, hey, Defendant A did not turn in his weapons, and it will go to Lower Paxton Township Police Department. It will go to the Dauphin County Sheriff. 911 will deliver those clean messages to those agencies. All of the police departments in PA, there should be no reason for you to manually enter one. Just take a look around. If you're looking for a police department, maybe it's not in Dauphin County, but it's actually in Cumberland County. You can always switch up the county box that you're searching on to find that agency. Out on the FAB website, there is an interactive police jurisdiction map. You can go on here, you can type in an address where the defendant lives, where the protected person lives, and it will tell you which police department covers that area. We found, since this has been out there, that we have a lot of clean messages going now to the proper police departments. So this is updated very frequently. This was put together by PCCD. And like I said, since this has been put up, we've had very few of, well, I don't know what police department it is, it's Lower Paxton Township, I think, but maybe it's not. Just type in the address, take a look. It'll tell you the police department, like I said. The changes on the final order, section box 13 is now where you pick the police departments. It's different than the temporary order. Again, make sure you put the plaintiff and the defendant's police departments in there so that, again, we can't find the defendant, law enforcement can't find the defendant. They can refer back to the plaintiff's police department to say, hey, do you have any information on this person? Do you know, because the police department may know, oh, we have several run-ins with him. We know he's now living in this apartment complex. Just a tool for law enforcement to try and get those weapons sooner and quicker to protect the protected person. Again, it works just like the temporary order. You select the county, and it will bring up all of the police departments there for you. I don't think we need to go over that again. This is just where all of those boxes are on the final order. Again, the map. When the order is filed, the defendant is given 24 hours to turn in his weapons. This is set up as a default. You can make it less, but you cannot make it more. If there is more time that's being allowed, that has to come from the judge to say, maybe he has to go from Dauphin County to Potter County, and it's going to take him a little bit longer than 24 hours. So that information will come from the judge. When you're looking in FAD, you'll search a case, you'll look at it, and it tells us the temporary order, and it gives us when it was effective and how many hours the defendant has to relinquish his weapons. It's pretty self-explanatory. If you would be putting in an order and you check that first box in section 6 that just said he's not allowed to acquire or possess, this will not show up in the case search under that temporary order as number of hours to relinquish, because the judge did not order his weapons to be relinquished. He's just saying he's not allowed to own or possess any weapons. This is what the clean message looks like when it goes out to law enforcement. It just tells us that he has so many, 24 hours to return those or get those weapons to the sheriff's department or law enforcement. There's a form out on FAD that law enforcement can use to take those weapons once the defendant brings them in to relinquish them. There's information on the form, what type of weapon is it? What type of ammunition is it? What type of condition is it in? That's all out there. That's more of a reference for law enforcement so that when they're returning those weapons to the defendant, They know exactly what weapons should be given to them, ammunition, what kind of shape they were in when they got here. The agency who has primary jurisdiction where the defendant lives is to investigate why the weapons have not been relinquished. So a defendant can be charged, Title 18, that they're not allowed to possess, use, manufacture, control, sell, or transfer firearms in accordance with Act 79. So they're going to be following up with the defendant, looking for the defendant. Why is he not turned in his weapons? That's something law enforcement will take care of. Once the clean messages go out to the agencies, once you take and you submit that order to PSP, you transfer the data sheet to PSP, it comes over to our PCOs, police communications officers at the PSP station, letting them know there's a PFA out there and they need to process it. They'll go in, they'll process it, it'll go into clean and NCIC. There's paper forms out on for law enforcement out on our CJIS Launchpad that is in the clean application. There's also forms, all the forms are located in FAD in the help menu, so they're available for you as well. And we also have them out on the PSP public internet site. There's an area in FAD where you can go out to take a look to see what relinquishments are pending for your county. These next couple slides walk you through how you can see those reports. So you would just click on the reports. You can select your county here, all ORIs, the date range. Search is the last update made to the order. So there may be orders out there older. So make sure when you're looking at those dates, you put in the dates that you're looking for. Results, it's a little, I think sometimes it's a little confusing to certain people when they're looking at these reports. But here, for an example, at Dauphin County, from April 1st to July 1st of 2019, they had 153 cases requiring weapon relinquishment. Of those 153, 96 of those orders have weapons relinquishment receipts that law enforcement has completed and attached to the case in the FAD system. The next number, the 57, are those that have no relinquishment receipts. So that means there's, of those 57, they may have been, there might be a law enforcement agency that's working on them. They may have disabled the notifications because the defendant lives in New Jersey, and New Jersey won't go and take their weapons because an out-of-state agency is not required to enforce Act 79 since it is a Pennsylvania law. And then finally, the last number there, the 41, that is the number of total cases that no one has taken any action in regards to those weapons. So here in the clean administrative section, our auditors are looking at these numbers continuously in all of the counties. They're reaching out to district attorney's office, detectives' offices, county detectives, the local police departments. Hey, why are you not getting these relinquishments done? This is the law and this is what needs to take place. So if you click on any of those numbers, it's going to bring you up those cases and it will give you, your county, the docket number, the FAD number. If you click on the FAD number is a unique number that is assigned by FAD when you enter the order into the system, into FAD. So if you click on that, it will bring back the next screen here we'll go through is, so we can see here, if we look on this order, this FAD number, we can look at the agencies notified to the right, tells us it's Lower Paxton Township, Millersburg Police Department, the Dauphin County Sheriff. So one of those agencies should be following up on this protection from abuse order to see why the defendant is not turning his weapons. Maybe, someone went out to the house, he wasn't there at the time, whatever the case may be. But they are the ones that are getting these notifications every morning, letting them know that Edward's guns have not been picked up. If you click on the FAD number, it gives you quick access to the case. It gives you everything that you would want to see if you did a search on the case. So we see, the docket number, the plaintiff, the defendant, most recent effective order. Oh, look, it has, 24 hours to relinquish his weapons. So it just takes you to the case without you having to go back and search all over again. Click on the FAD number and it will take you where you need to go. So hacking the record. So for you guys out there as advocates, these are some of the things that we need at PSP in order to properly put the information into Clean and NCIC. When an officer or trooper is responding to a domestic violence incident, someone is running that information for them, whether it be them in the car or their dispatch center, letting them know, hey, there's a PFA for the defendant A, that's where you're going. So they have a heads up what they're going into when they get to the domestic. So one of the big things that we're looking for is defendant's date of birth. So if there is no date of birth, sex, or race for the defendant, the protection from abuse order will only stay here in Pennsylvania in the Protection from Abuse Registry. So what that means to law enforcement and criminal justice agencies in another state is that defendant could go out to Ohio and he could purchase a weapon. When they ran him through the national gun check system, they would not know that he had a protection from abuse order in another state. So a lot of times, for those of you who have gotten those calls from our police PCOs at PSP, hey, do you have a date of birth for the defendant? Or they'll send a message back to you through FAD saying, hey, next time he comes in, can you get us a date of birth? How about a sex and a race? That's what they're looking to do. We realize that sometimes the protected person, the plaintiff, does not always know what the defendant's date of birth is. However, they should know what their sex and race is. There are tools on our side that our PCOs through Clean have access to try and find a defendant's date of birth. However, the one thing that's really not easy for them is if the defendant has a common name, Tom Jones, Michael Smith, whatever the case may be, it's hard for them then to determine who this PFA is actually, who is the defendant in this protection from abuse order. Hair, eyes, height, and weight also helps to identify the defendant for enforcement of the PFA. Here again, a common name, the protected person and the defendant both have common names, Michael Smith and Smith. We need to enforce these protection from abuse orders. So as much information as you can get us on the defendant helps when it comes to enforcing them. One of the other big things is we follow NCIC, which is the FBI's database, when entering information into the system. One of their guidelines is a weight can only be 50 pounds to 499 pounds. We've run into some situations in the last couple months where when the PFA is entered, the defendant's weight is over 499 pounds. And that gives a problem to the PCO when she's trying to enter the protection from abuse order through the FAD system. Once they get it at the station, they process it through FAD, that protection from abuse order is in the database, Clean and NCIC, within seconds. So if they have to go back and now figure out, well, maybe I see it's 600 pounds. Now they have to go in and manually enter that protection from abuse order into clean and NCIC. Not a big deal, but if they're busy, if they have a lot of traffic stops going on at their station, they have major incidents, it could be a delay in getting that order entered into clean and NCIC. Dates of birth for the protected person and the plaintiff. Please try and get those dates of birth as well for enforcement of the PFA. There's a process in place where if the protected person and the plaintiff's date of birth are blank when they come over through the process, through PFAD, we insert a generic date of birth in there. Their date of birth for the protected person and the plaintiff are mandatory fields for NCIC to go out into the national database. So if, the protected person is, in another state somewhere and law enforcement, there's a domestic law enforcement in that other state is trying to find this protection from abuse order in the national database, if they run the protected person or the plaintiff's name and their real date of birth, they may not get what we call hit on that protection from abuse order from Pennsylvania. So please, again, get us those dates of birth. Again, it's more for enforcement of that protected for that PFA. It's safety for that protected person and that plaintiff. So protected persons, sex and race, again, we need those as well. Confidential addresses. So when we realize that there are times when the protected person's address is confidential, you're moving them into a shelter or you're putting them somewhere where no one needs to know where they are. But we at PSP need to know where that address is for enforcement of that PFA. So if you have something like that, again, the PSP station may be reaching out, asking, hey, can you give us the address? We'll keep it here on station for enforcement of this PFA. Just so they know when it comes time, if there is an incident, that yes, they know she's at this address. This is where they can find her. It's always a good thing. Like I said, they may reach out to you. If they don't, just reach out to them and let them know, hey, we filed this PFA. The protected person's address is confidential. They'll just note it on station on their copy of the PSP data sheet, again, for enforcement purposes. Minor protected persons. So here again, with these, initials are not a good thing for enforcement of a PFA. If you read this slide, this initials does not pertain to protection from abuse orders as it does in other court-generated documents. So please, again, initials are not good for an enforcement of the PFA because we don't know who ABC Smith is. We don't know who EA Smith is. Again, we need those minor protected persons' names. Hyphenated names, please, if you're entering a petition, temporary order with someone who has a hyphenated name, please make sure that hyphenated name is put in the petition or the order with that hyphen in it. It saves time on the other end at PSP getting those orders into clean and NCIC. If you have any questions going down the road, you want to reach out to us here in Clean, here's our contact information at the Public Safety Delivery Center, or it's our help desk for PSP. They'll take your information. Someone from the Clean Administrative Section will reach out to you and help answer your questions. So that concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
There are no questions in the Q&A. If anyone has any questions, on the left side of your screen, there's the Q&A. You can enter any questions in there if you wish to ask them.
Okay, so I guess if there's no questions, thank you, everyone. Again, if you need anything, you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you and have a good day.